The fluorescent lights hum sharply above, casting a cold glow across the lab as Zahara stands at her workstation, her fingers wrapped tightly around her father's old screwdriver. The metal is worn smooth, every groove a memory of late nights. In the garage, her father's patient voice guiding her through circuits and setbacks. Mrs. Whitlock stands across from her, her nails painted a glossy red, tapping out a rhythm of impatience on the stack of project instructions. Creative, but impractical. The fair expects professional work. Her words are clipped, her eyes barely meeting Zahara's before drifting to the next project on the table. Zahara lifts her chin, voice steady but soft. It's for communities without clean water. My dad taught me. The teacher interrupts, her tone dismissive. The fair isn't a charity. The words land heavily, and for a moment, all Zahara hears is the slow drip of water from her purifier into the beaker below, each drop a reminder of what's at stake. She remembers her father's hands, strong and gentle, guiding her own as they soldered wires together. Science is power, Z. The memory is warm, but the present feels cold and unwelcoming. The scent of bleach and chemical cleaners thick in the air. Mrs. Whitlock's heels clack against the tile as she turns away, leaving Zahara standing, alone, the echo of her footsteps fading into the background noise of the lab. The screwdriver presses into Zahara's palm, grounding her, reminding her of every lesson learned and every obstacle overcome. Down the hallway, the faint tap of a cane grows louder, steady and sure, a sound that cuts through the uncertainty like a promise. Zahara's breath catches as her grandmother's silhouette appears in the doorway, her presence filling the room with a quiet strength. Zahara straightens her shoulders, feeling the weight of legacy and hope settle over her. The moment hangs, tense and expectant, as if the whole world is waiting to see what she will do next. Before the story continues, please let us know from where you are watching this video. Write your city or country in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like if you believe in stories that challenge injustice. Your engagement gives power to voices that need to be heard. Grace's entrance is quiet but undeniable, the steady tap of her cane slicing through the lab's tension. She pauses at the threshold, her presence drawing every gaze, her eyes unwavering as they settle on Mrs. Whitlock. The teacher's posture shifts, a subtle tightening of her jaw, and a brief falter in her usually unshakable confidence. Zahara feels her grandmother's presence behind her, solid, unyielding, a living reminder of battles fought long before this day. Grace moves forward, each step measured, her gaze never leaving Mrs. Whitlock, who stands a little straighter but can't quite meet the older woman's eyes. The air thickens with anticipation as Grace stops beside Zahara, her hand resting gently but firmly on her granddaughter's shoulder. "We'll let the state judges decide then," Grace says, her voice calm but carrying a weight that fills the room. Mrs. Whitlock's lips pressed into a thin line, her authority quietly challenged in front of the class. A few students glance up from their work, sensing the shift, their eyes darting between the adults. Zahara's heart pounds, caught between anxiety and a sudden surge of pride. The clock on the wall seems to hesitate, the background noise of the lab fading into a heavy pause. Mrs. Whitlock clears her throat, searching for a response that never comes. Grace's stare remains steady, her presence a silent promise that Zahara will not stand alone. Zahara draws strength from her grandmother's calm, her own resolve hardening as she looks back at Mrs. Whitlock. The teacher finally looks away, her power diminished by Grace's quiet defiance. As Grace gently guides Zahara from the lab, the other students watch in silence, some with curiosity, others with newfound respect. The door closes behind them, the tension in the room slowly dissolving, leaving Mrs. Whitlock with nothing but the echo of Grace's words and the realization that the ground beneath her has shifted. The hum of Zahara's purifier fills the lab, its steady whir a quiet act of defiance against the scrutiny pressing in from every corner. Water trickles into the beaker, each drop a small victory, though the air is thick with skepticism. Zahara's grip tightens around her father's screwdriver, the familiar weight grounding her as she stands before the judge's table. Mrs. Whitlock, lingers nearby, arms folded, her eyes darting between Zahara and the machine with a mixture of irritation and unease. A judge leans forward, studying the purifier, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What's your process?" he asks, his tone neutral but curious. Zahara meets his gaze, her voice steady. "Solar panels power the filtration. It's designed for places that don't have access to clean water or electricity." Another judge, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, nods slowly, her pen tapping thoughtfully on her notepad. Mrs. Whitlock shifts her weight, her foot tapping an impatient rhythm on the tile. The tension is broken only by the soft gurgle of the purifier and the scribble of pens. Zahara's classmates watch from their stations, some with open curiosity, others whispering behind their hands. One boy offers her a quick, supportive glance. Another bites his lip, uncertain. Zahara's mind drifts for a moment to her father's laughter in the garage, the memory a shield against the coldness of the lab. The judges exchange a look, their expressions unreadable, then return their attention to Zahara. Mrs. Whitlock's jaw clenches, her authority slipping with every nod of approval from the panel. The purifier's pulse grows louder in Zahara's ears, a heartbeat of hope and determination. As the judges move on to the next project, Zahara releases a breath she didn't realize she was holding, her shoulders relaxing just a little. The machine keeps working, unfazed, a quiet testament to resilience in a room built on doubt. Mr. Ruiz pauses in the hallway, mop in hand, watching through the lab window as Zahara stands by her project, her face a mask of determination and exhaustion. He waits until the last judge leaves before stepping inside, closing the door softly behind him. Zahara looks up, surprised to see him linger. Mr. Ruiz offers a small, tired smile, then reaches into his pocket and pulls out a folded sheet of paper, its edges worn from years of being hidden. He sets it gently on the corner of Zahara's table. "You're not the first," he says, his voice low, carrying the weight of too many years and too many stories. Zahara's brow furrows as she opens the paper, revealing a list of names: Miguel, Aisha, and others, each one a student whose work was dismissed, marked down, or quietly pushed aside. "She's been doing this a long time," Mr. Ruiz continues, his eyes flicking toward the door, then back to Zahara. "People forget, but I don't." He glances at the purifier, then at Zahara, his gaze full of unspoken encouragement. Zahara's hands tremble as she traces the names, realizing she's part of a much larger story. The hum of the purifier seems louder now, filling the space with a sense of shared struggle. Mr. Ruiz's shoulders sag for a moment, the burden of silent witness heavy on him, but he straightens, offering Zahara a nod of solidarity. "Don't let her decide what you're worth," he says quietly. Zahara meets his eyes, gratitude and resolve mingling in her expression. As Mr. Ruiz leaves, he glances back once, a silent promise that she isn't alone. The folded list remains. On the table, a reminder of battles fought in the shadows and the quiet power of truth finally brought to light. Zahara lingers in front of the trophy case, its glass polished to a mirror shine. Behind the glass, a row of golden figures, each engraved with names that echo sameness, grins frozen in time. Her own reflection waves beside them, the faint outline of her purifier visible in the background, a quiet challenge to the tradition, on display. The hallway is empty except for the faint footsteps of students passing by, their voices hushed as they glance at the case and then at Zahara. She studies the names, her fingers tracing the cool surface, feeling the distance between her and the history inside. Grace's voice echoes in her mind, soft but unwavering. "They'll see your light." Zahara's grip tightens around her father's screwdriver, the grooves pressing into her palm, grounding her in the present. She remembers the look of pride on her grandmother's face, the silent encouragement in Mr. Ruiz's nod, and the list of names that came before her. The weight of exclusion hangs heavy, but so does the possibility of change. A teacher walks by, offering a brief, uncertain smile before moving on. Zahara's classmates gather at the end of the hall, some watching, with curiosity, others with quiet support. The trophy case, once a barrier, now feels like a threshold. Zahara breathes in, steady and sure, her reflection growing clearer as she stands taller. The purifier's hum from the lab is faint but persistent, a reminder that her work continues, that her story is still being written. She steps back, resolves the hardening in her eyes, and turns away from the glass. The memory of the trophies lingers, not as a symbol of what she can't have, but as a vision of what she will claim. The future for the first time feels possible. Mr. Ruiz moves quietly through the empty hallway, his footsteps muffled by years of routine. In his hands he carries a battered folder, its label faded and corners curled from being tucked away too long. He waits until the corridor is clear, then slips into the lab where Zahara sits, her shoulders hunched over her notes. Without a word, he places the folder on her table and gives a small nod, his eyes tired but kind. Zahara looks at him, puzzled, then opens the folder to find a stack of old documents, complaint letters, handwritten notes, and printed emails. Each page tells a story students whose projects were dismissed, whose names appear again and again, marked with red ink and terse comments. Miguel's robot, Aisha's climate model, and so many others, all quietly set aside. Mr. Ruiz clears his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. People forget. But these, they don't go away. Zahara flips through the pages, her heart heavy with the realization that her struggle is part of a long, hidden pattern. The folder smells faintly of dust and ink, the weight of years pressing down on her. Mr. Ruiz stands beside her, his presence a silent reassurance. "You're not alone in this," he says, his hand resting briefly on the back of her chair before he returns to his cart. Zahara looks up, meeting his gaze, and sees the quiet strength of someone who's watched too many dreams set aside. The folder sits between them, no longer just evidence, but a bond one generation passing the truth to the next. As Mr. Ruiz leaves, Zahara straightens her notes, her resolve hardening. The folder remains open, a silent record of injustice and a call for change, its pages ready to be read, remembered, and finally answered. The garage is dim, lit only by a single bulb swinging overhead and the soft blue glow of Zahara's phone propped up on a paint can. Tools are scattered across the workbench, wires snaking between jars of screws and old coffee mugs. Zahara stands over her purifier, sleeves rolled up, her hands steady despite the fatigue in her eyes. Grace's voice drifts in from the kitchen, sharing stories of marches and hard-won victories, her words a quiet anthem for Zahara's work. Jamal leans against the doorframe, camera in hand, capturing every spark and every moment Zahara's resolve flickers but never fades. The sound of the soldering iron hissing against metal fills the air, punctuated by the occasional pop of electricity. Suddenly the garage door creaks open and Mrs. Whitlock steps inside, her face tight with disapproval. "School property stays. Here," she says, her voice sharp, but Zahara doesn't flinch. "You just don't want me to win," Zahara replies, her words soft but unwavering. The confrontation is brief, but the tension lingers as Mrs. Whitlock leaves, her authority dented by Zahara's quiet defiance. Jamal lowers the camera, giving Zahara a nod of respect. She returns to her work, reconnecting wires, the purifier's hum growing stronger with each adjustment. Outside, the neighborhood is silent, unaware of the rebellion taking shape in this small, cluttered space. The night stretches on, heavy with the promise of change, as Zahara and her family refuse to let their story end in darkness. The garage becomes more than a workshop. It is a sanctuary, a place where hope is soldered back together, one connection at a time. As the first hints of dawn creep through the window, Zahara wipes sweat from her brow, her eyes bright with determination. The fight is far from over, but she is ready. Jamal's phone glows in the dark garage, the camera lens fixed on Zahara as she tests her purifier for the 100th time. He records quietly, catching every detail, the determined set of her jaw, the flicker of anxiety in her eyes, the way her hands move with purpose. The video captures Mrs. Whitlock's voice from the doorway, sharp and final. "This is not up to standard." Zahara's reply is barely above a whisper, but it's clear and unyielding. "You never wanted me to compete." The tension in the room is thick, every breath measured, every word loaded. Jamal doesn't speak, but his camera doesn't waver. He uploads the clip with the hashtag #LetZaharaCompete, his thumb hesitating for a moment before pressing send. The video spreads, faster than anyone expects. Comments pour in, some outraged, others inspired, all demanding answers. Elena Torres, a local reporter, sees the clip and starts digging, uncovering a pattern of exclusion and bias that stretches back years. The school's leadership tries to contain the fallout, but the story grows with every retweet and share. Students whisper in hallways, teachers exchange uneasy glances, and the principal's office becomes a revolving door of urgent meetings. The phone's glare becomes a spotlight, forcing the institution to confront what it tried to keep hidden. Zahara watches the numbers climb, her heart pounding with fear and hope. For the first time, she feels the weight and power of her story, amplified by a community that refuses to look away. The movement is no longer just about a project, it's about every student who's ever been told they don't belong. The garage, once a place of quiet struggle, becomes the epicenter of a growing call for justice. Nothing will be the same. The classroom is filled with students, but Zahara feels utterly alone as she takes her seat at the far end, her project set neatly in front of her. The hum of conversation fades when she enters, replaced by a hush that spreads from desk to desk. Mrs. Whitlock stands at the front, her arms crossed, and her gaze fixed anywhere but on Zahara. The judges move from project to project, their voices low, their faces unreadable. Zahara's classmates glance her way, some with curiosity, others with discomfort, a few with quiet support that never quite reaches their lips. The air is heavy, every movement deliberate, every word measured. Zahara keeps her chin up, her hands folded in her lap, the memory of the garage and her family's encouragement echoing in her mind. One judge stops in front of her, eyes flicking, from the purifier to Zahara's face. He nods, scribbles a note, and moves on without a word. Mrs. Whitlock's jaw tightens, her posture rigid, as if willing Zahara to disappear. Elena Torres enters with her camera, the lens sweeping the room and landing on Zahara. The energy shifts, whispers ripple through the rows, and the principal appears at the door, his expression grave. "The board will review all submissions," he announces, his voice carrying a weight that settles over the class. Mrs. Whitlock's composure falters, her authority quietly slipping away. Zahara feels the isolation, but also a strange sense of strength, knowing her story is no longer invisible. As the judges finish their rounds, the classroom remains tense, every student aware that something has changed. Zahara sits a little taller, her resolve unbroken, as the world outside begins to take notice of the quiet storm building within these four walls. In the cramped staff room, the air is thick with the aroma of burnt coffee and unease. Teachers gather in small clusters, voices lowered, glancing over their shoulders before they speak. One teacher nervously stirs her tea, her hand trembling slightly as she leans in. "Did you see the video? That girl Zahara, she's everywhere now." Another, a math teacher with tired eyes, shakes his head. "It's not the first time. I remember Miguel's project last year, marked down for no real reason." Someone else, usually silent, mutters, "We all know how it goes. Some projects just never get a fair look." The words hang in the air, heavy with the weight of complicity. Mrs. Whitlock enters, her presence immediately stiffening the room. Conversations halt, replaced by forced smiles and awkward shuffling of papers. She pours herself a cup of coffee, her back rigid, acting as if she hasn't heard a thing. A younger teacher, new to the school, catches the eye of a colleague and raises her eyebrows in a silent question. The older teacher just shrugs, a gesture that says, "This is how it's always been." The principal's voice echoes faintly from the hallway, reminding everyone of the board's review. The staff room feels smaller, the walls closing in as the reality of what's happening outside seeps in. Some teachers exchange glances, regret flickering in their expressions, while others look away, unwilling to confront the truth. The bell rings, and the room empties quickly, everyone eager to escape the tension. Mrs. Whitlock remains by the window, staring out, her reflection wavering in the glass. The doubts and whispers linger, a quiet storm building behind closed doors, as the school's foundation begins to shift beneath the weight of long-ignored truths. In a dim storage room at the back of the school, stacks of folders are piled high. On a metal shelf, their edges yellowed and curling. The dust is thick, undisturbed for years, settling over complaint letters and official forms that never made it past the first review. A janitor unlocks the door with a quiet sigh, his movements careful, almost reverent. He pulls a folder from the middle of the stack, its label barely legible. Student grievances. Inside, the pages are filled with familiar handwriting, stories of projects dismissed, voices never heard, and hope quietly extinguished. Miguel's name appears again, so does Aisha's, and others, Zahara's name now among them. Each letter is a plea for fairness, met with the same stamped response, reviewed. No action taken. The janitor's hands linger on one letter. The ink faded, but the pain was still raw. He shakes his head, a silent apology to every student who trusted the system to listen. The room is silent, except for the faint hum of the building's old heating system, a reminder that life goes on above, unaware of the stories hidden below. He closes the folder, dust motes swirling in the air, and places it back on the shelf. For a moment, he stands still, the weight of forgotten voices pressing down on him. He locks the door, the click echoing down the empty hallway. As he walks, away the files remain, a silent archive of denial and neglect. But now, with Zahara's story spreading, the dust begins to feel lighter, as if the truth might finally find its way out of the shadows and into the light where it belongs. In the Heights, small neighborhood park, voices drift on the evening breeze, blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children. An elderly black woman sits on a bench, her cane resting beside her, telling her granddaughter about the time she was told her science project was too ambitious. Across the path, a Latino landscaper wipes sweat from his brow, pausing to share with a friend how his son's essay was marked down for being off-topic, though it was the only one to mention their family's heritage. These stories pass quietly from person to person, never shouted but never quite forgotten. At Abi Adubam, the corner store, the cashier lowers her voice as she tells a regular, "I saw Zahara's video. Reminds me of what happened to my cousin." The regular nods, understanding in his eyes, their exchange brief but heavy with meaning. In living rooms, families gather around phones and laptops, watching Zahara's story unfold, their own memories surfacing with every headline. The pastor at the local church pauses his sermon to mention the importance of being heard, his words met with knowing glances from the pews. Even those who have never met Zahara feel the ripple, recognizing pieces of their own struggles in her fight. The community's pulse beats stronger with each retelling, a quiet chorus of resilience and hope. No one calls a meeting, but the sense of unity grows, neighbors exchanging supportive nods and small acts of kindness. The stories, once carried on quiet breath, begin to weave a tapestry of shared experience, connecting generations and backgrounds. As dusk settles, porch lights flicker on, illuminating faces marked by both hardship and determination. The neighborhood, once divided by unspoken barriers, begins to find its voice, ready to stand together for something bigger than any one story. The first hashtag appears late at night, typed by a student who watched Zahara's video and couldn't sleep. Let Zahara Compete spreads quietly at first, a few retweets, a handful of comments, then suddenly it's everywhere. Students from other schools share their own stories, some angry, some hopeful, all demanding to be seen. Social media feeds fill, with clips of Zahara's purifier, screenshots of Mrs. Whitlock's dismissive glare, and messages of support from strangers across the country. Elena Torres, the local reporter, posts a thread exposing years of buried complaints, her notifications lighting up with every new reply. Teachers from distant districts chime in, some expressing shame, others promising change. The school's official account tries to control the narrative, but every post is met with a flood of replies, each one a reminder that the world is watching. In group chats and comment sections, students organize, planning to wear blue in solidarity, to walk out if Zahara is barred from the fair. Parents email the board, their words sharper than ever before. The hashtag trends nationally, picked up by activists and news anchors, turning Zahara's fight into a symbol for something much bigger. The movement is loud but disciplined, each tweet a digital protest sign, each share a step in a march that spans cities and screens. Zahara watches the numbers climb, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and pride. For the first time, she feels the weight of a community behind her, their voices amplifying her own. The viral wave doesn't just demand justice for Zahara. It calls for a reckoning, a promise that no more stories will be buried in silence. The world, once indifferent, now listens. The boardroom is cloaked in early morning gray, the air thick, with unease as school officials file in, their faces drawn and eyes wary. The superintendent sits at the head of the table, hands folded, the usual confidence replaced by a careful neutrality. Folders are stacked in front of each member, Zahara's name scrawled across the top page. A legal advisor clears her throat, her voice barely above a whisper, as she summarizes the growing public backlash and the viral evidence piling up online. One board member, usually outspoken, fidgets with his pen, glancing at the others for reassurance that never comes. Another, a veteran teacher, taps her foot under the table, her nerves betrayed by the rhythm. The principal reads aloud a letter. From a parent, the words sharp and direct, calling for accountability and transparency. As he finishes, a hush settles over the room, broken only by the soft scrape of a chair as someone shifts uncomfortably. The superintendent finally speaks, her tone measured. "We can't ignore this. Not anymore." Her words hang in the air, heavier than any policy or rule. Eyes meet across the table, some filled with regret, others with quiet resolve. The old alliances begin to crumble, replaced by new, uneasy partnerships formed out of necessity. A younger board member, emboldened by the movement outside, suggests immediate action, a review of all past complaints, a public statement, real change. The suggestion is met first with silence, then with a series of hesitant nods. The power in the room shifts, subtle but unmistakable, as those who once clung to the status quo realize the cost of standing still. Outside, the sound of students chanting Zahara's name drifts through the window, a reminder that the world is watching and waiting for the board's next move. Mrs. Whitlock sits alone in her office, the morning light casting long, uneven shadows across her desk. She stares at the stack of emails and printed complaints, her hands trembling as she shuffles through them. The voices from the hallway filter in, students whispering, teachers speaking in guarded tones, her name now a question mark instead of a badge of authority. She tries to steady herself, smoothing her skirt and reaching for her mug, but her grip falters, coffee sloshing onto a pile of old lesson plans. Her reflection in the window is unfamiliar, eyes rimmed with fatigue, lips pressed tight. She listens to the faint chant of Zahara's name outside, each repetition chipping away at the certainty she once wore like armor. A knock at the door makes her flinch. The principal enters, his tone polite but clipped, asking for her response to the board's review. Mrs. Whitlock's answer is halting, her voice thin. I followed the guidelines. I just wanted the best for the school." The principal's gaze is steady, unmoved. The guidelines weren't fair. The words land hard, and Mrs. Whitlock's composure cracks further. She looks down at her hands, noticing how tightly she's clutching a red pen, the ink staining her skin. Her authority, once unquestioned, now feels brittle, ready to break. As the principal leaves, Mrs. Whitlock sits in the quiet, the weight of her choices pressing in from every side. She hears the faint sound of students laughing in the distance and realizes, for the first time, that she's no longer part of their world. The room feels colder, the walls closer, and she is left with nothing but the echo of her own doubt. Zahara sits at her kitchen table, the morning sun spilling across her notebooks and scattered tools. She reviews her notes, fingers tracing diagrams and calculations, her face set with quiet determination. Grace pours tea in the background, her movements unhurried, her presence a steady reassurance. Zahara's phone buzzes with messages, classmates sharing encouragement, strangers sending support, Jamal updating her on the latest news. She reads each one, a small smile flickering at the corners of her mouth, but her focus never wavers. The house is filled with the soft sounds of family. Grace humming an old protest song, Jamal editing video clips, the gentle hum of the purifier running in the corner. Zahara closes her eyes for a moment, recalling her father's words. "You're stronger than you know, Z." She inhales deeply, letting the memory steady her nerves. The world outside is tense, the school board meeting looming. Yet inside, Zahara finds a rare stillness. She sharpens a pencil, the sound crisp in the quiet room, and begins to write her statement for the hearing. Every word is chosen with care, every sentence shaped by the lessons of those who came before her. Grace places a gentle hand on Zahara's shoulder. "Whatever happens, you speak your truth." Zahara nods, her resolve hardening. She glances at her father's screwdriver on the table, the metal catching the light. A symbol of resilience passed down. As the hour approaches, Zahara stands, shoulders squared, her heart steady. She gathers her papers, hugs Grace and Jamal, and walks to the door. The air outside is cool, the sky clear, and she steps forward, ready to face whatever comes. The calm she carries is not the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose, a quiet strength before the coming storm. The school auditorium fills slowly, the air charged with anticipation and unease. Zahara enters, her steps measured, clutching her notes as Grace and Jamal follow close behind. Rows of students, parents, and teachers fill the seats, their voices low, eyes flickering with curiosity and hope. The board members take their places on the stage, faces tense, some avoiding Zahara's gaze, others meeting it with cautious respect. Cameras from local news crews blink red, capturing every shift and whisper. Elena Torres stands at the back, notepad ready, her presence a reminder that this moment will not go unnoticed. The principal clears his throat, calling the meeting to order, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. Zahara's heart pounds, but her expression is calm, her resolve unshaken. Mrs. Whitlock sits apart from the others, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the floor. The room quiets as Zahara rises to speak, her voice clear and steady, each word carrying the weight of her journey and the stories of those who came before her. She speaks not just for herself, but for every name in Mr. Ruiz's folder, every student whose project was dismissed, and every family who waited for justice. The audience listens, some nodding in agreement, others wiping away tears. Outside a crowd gathers, their chants a distant thunder, the sound swelling as Zahara finishes her statement. The board members exchange glances, the old alliances crumbling, under the pressure of truth. For a moment, the entire room seems to hold its breath, suspended between the past and what comes next. Zahara sits, shoulders relaxed, her gaze unwavering. The storm has arrived, and with it, the promise that change is no longer a distant hope, but a present demand. Under the bright glare of the fairground lights, Zahara stands beside her purifier, the machine's low hum rising above the distant buzz of the crowd. Judges circle the table, their faces a mix of skepticism and curiosity, clipboards in hand, pens poised. Zahara's hands rest lightly on her project, her posture calm, her eyes steady. Mrs. Whitlock lingers at the edge of the crowd, her expression unreadable, arms folded tightly across her chest. The first judge leans in, watching as Zahara pours muddy water into the intake. The purifier sputters, then works, sending a clear stream into the glass beaker. The crowd murmurs, the transformation undeniable. "How does it work?" a judge asks, voice measured. Zahara answers, her voice unwavering. Solar panels power the filter. It's designed for places where clean water and electricity are hard to find. Another judge, impressed, jots down notes. The hum of the purifier becomes the heartbeat of the moment, each drop of clean water a quiet rebuke to every doubt and every dismissal. A student from another school whispers, "She built that herself?" Zahara hears, but keeps her focus, channeling the lessons of her father and the courage of her grandmother. Mrs. Whitlock shifts her weight, her confidence eroding as the judges nod in approval. The crowd grows, drawn by the story unfolding under the lights. The fairground, once a place of exclusion, now feels transformed, the spotlight illuminating not just Zahara's invention, but the resilience that brought her here. As the judges move to the next table, Zahara stands a little taller, her project humming steadily, a beacon of hope and proof that justice can be engineered drop by drop, in the open for all to see. As the judges finish their inspection, one pauses, adjusting his glasses as he studies Zahara's purifier and then her face. The crowd's chatter softens, anticipation hanging in the air. "Who guided you through this?" he asks, his voice gentle but direct. Zahara looks up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment she sees every late night in the garage, every lesson from her father, every word of encouragement from Grace. She glances briefly at Mrs. Whitlock, whose jaw tightens as she listens, then turns her attention back to the judge. "My dad," Zahara says, her voice clear and proud. "He believed in me, even when others didn't." The judge nods, a small smile breaking through his professional reserve. "That belief shows," he replies, jotting something on his notepad. Another judge, moved by Zahara's honesty, leans forward. "And who inspired the purpose behind your project?" Zahara answers without hesitation. "My community. People who need clean water who don't always get a fair chance." The words land softly but firmly, echoing across the fairground. Mrs. Whitlock shifts uncomfortably, her arms dropping to her sides. The crowd murmurs, a wave of respect building as Zahara stands her ground. The judges exchange glances, their skepticism replaced by admiration. In that moment, Zahara's lineage is not just blood, but every person who ever fought to be seen. The judge closes his notepad, offering a nod that feels like a passing of the torch. Zahara's heart swells with pride, knowing she has spoken, not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever been overlooked. The moment lingers, a quiet affirmation that truth, when spoken with dignity, can change the course of a story. Mrs. Whitlock stands at the edge of the fairground, her posture rigid as she watches the judges move from table to table. The crowd's attention is fixed on Zahara, and every approving nod from a judge chips away at Mrs. Whitlock's certainty. She clutches her pen, fingers digging into the plastic, her knuckles pale. As a judge praises Zahara's innovation, Mrs. Whitlock's grip tightens until, with a sharp crack, the pen snaps in her hand, ink seeping into her palm. She wipes it away quickly, glancing around to see if anyone noticed. A teacher nearby offers a sympathetic but distant smile, then turns away, unwilling to share in her discomfort. Mrs. Whitlock tries to compose herself, smoothing her skirt and forcing a neutral expression, but her eyes betray a flicker of panic. The whispers of students and parents reach her ears, their words a quiet indictment. "She never believed in her," someone says. "Maybe she was wrong." Mrs. Whitlock's composure falters as she realizes the authority she once wielded is slipping, replaced by doubt and regret. The judges move on, and she is left standing alone, the ink stain on her hand a mark she cannot hide. She looks down, the broken pen a symbol of her unraveling control. For the first time, she feels exposed, her decisions questioned not just by students, but by her peers and the wider community. The fairground feels colder, the laughter and applause for Zahara, a distant storm. Mrs. Whitlock turns away, her shoulders sagging, the weight of her choices pressing in. In the space where her confidence once stood, only uncertainty remains, and she knows the story she tried to control has slipped beyond her grasp. The crowd at the fairground shifts, a gentle wave of movement as more people gather around Zahara's table. At first the air is thick with skepticism, parents whispering doubts, students exchanging uncertain glances, a few teachers standing with arms crossed, waiting for a flaw to reveal itself. But as Zahara's purifier runs, transforming dirty water into a crystal-clear stream, the mood begins to change. A father in the front row nudges his daughter, whispering, "Look at that, she built it herself." A group of students who once doubted now lean in, eyes wide, their skepticism melting into admiration. One mother wipes away a tear, recalling her own childhood dreams dismissed by teachers who never listened. The judges' approving nods ripple through the crowd, each gesture fueling a growing sense of possibility. A teacher, who once sided with Mrs. Whitlock, finds herself clapping quietly, pride flickering in her eyes. The murmurs shift from doubt to awe, the fairground alive with a new energy. Zahara stands tall, her confidence contagious, her quiet determination inspiring even those who arrived expecting to see her fail. Mrs. Whitlock lingers at the edge, watching as the community she once controlled now turns its attention to Zahara, their support growing louder with every passing moment. The applause builds, not thunderous but steady, a collective acknowledgement that something important has happened. In the faces around her, Zahara sees not just approval, but hope, a belief that change is possible, that barriers can be broken. The crowd's murmur, once a chorus of doubt, becomes a song of possibility, echoing across the fairground and into the hearts of everyone watching. For the first time, Zahara feels truly seen, her work celebrated by those who once questioned her place. Zahara steps forward to accept the first-place trophy, its polished surface gleaming under the fairground lights. As she lifts it, the glass case behind her catches the reflection of Mrs. Whitlock's face-tightened lips, eyes shadowed with disbelief and regret. The moment is heavy, a silent exchange of power between past and future. Around Zahara, the crowd's applause rises, steady and sincere, filling the space with a sense of justice finally served. Her hands, steady and sure, hold the trophy like a beacon, a symbol not just of victory, but of resilience and dignity. The whispers of doubt that once followed her project now fade into the background, replaced by nods of respect and smiles of encouragement. A reporter steps forward, microphone in hand, asking, "What's next for you?" Zahara's voice is calm but resolute. "Making sure no one else gets silenced." The words ripple through the crowd, a promise carried on the breeze. Mrs. Whitlock watches from a distance, the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the reflection in the glass a reminder of the walls she helped build and the ones now coming down. Zahara's family surrounds her, their pride quiet but fierce, a testament to generations of strength and hope. The trophy gleams in her hands, but it is the journey behind it, the battles fought in silence, the courage to keep going that truly shines. As the crowd disperses, Zahara lingers a moment longer, her gaze fixed on the trophy case, the future unfolding before her like a path lit by every small victory. The reflection fades, but the impact remains, etched deep in memory and heart. Camera flashes pop as Zahara stands before the crowd, the trophy still warm in her hands. Elena Torres, microphone poised, steps closer, her eyes meeting Zahara's with a mix of admiration and urgency. "Zahara, what does this victory mean to you?" Elena asks, her voice carrying above the fading applause. Zahara hesitates, glancing at her grandmother and brother, then back at the reporter. It means no one should have to fight. This hard just to be heard," she says, her words careful but full of conviction. Elena nods, her pen moving quickly across her notepad. "And what would you say to other students who feel overlooked?" Zahara's answer is quiet but unwavering. "Don't let anyone tell you your ideas don't matter. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. You're not alone." The crowd listens, some nodding, others wiping away tears. Elena lowers the microphone, her expression softening. "Thank you, Zahara. Your story will help more people than you know." The camera's red light blinks, capturing the moment for news feeds and social media. Zahara feels the weight of the promise she's just made, her resolve deepening as she looks out over the faces in the crowd. Mrs. Whitlock stands at the edge, her posture slumped, the reality of the shift settling in. Elena offers Zahara a reassuring smile before turning back to the cameras, her voice steady as she delivers her report. Today, a student's courage sparked a conversation that will not be silenced. As the crowd begins to disperse, Zahara's words linger in the air, a quiet vow to every student who has ever felt invisible. The promise is clear. Justice doesn't end with a trophy. It begins with a voice. The boardroom is tense, sunlight slanting through the blinds as stacks of documents and printed emails cover the polished table. The principal sits at the head, his voice steady as he lays out Elena's findings for all to see. Board members leaf through the evidence, their faces shifting from disbelief to discomfort as the pattern of exclusion becomes undeniable. Mrs. Whitlock sits at the far end, her resignation letter trembling in her hand, knuckles white. A legal advisor clears her throat, reading aloud a summary of complaints that had been quietly filed away for years. "We failed these students," she says, her words landing with the finality of a gavel. One board member, usually silent, speaks up, his voice thick with regret. "We can't let this happen again." Another, younger and resolute, suggests immediate reforms and a public apology. The room fills with hesitant nods, the old guard's resistance melting under the weight of evidence and public scrutiny. The principal turns to Mrs. Whitlock, his tone formal but unyielding. "This is not just about one project. It's about every student who was ever dismissed." Mrs. Whitlock lowers her gaze, the resignation letter slipping from her grasp onto the table. The board votes, the decision unanimous. New policies, mandatory training, and a review of every complaint. Outside, the muffled sound of students cheering filters in, a signal that the world has changed. As the meeting ends, board members linger, some offering Zahara's name as a model for future recognition, others reflecting on how close they came to letting the truth stay buried. The air feels lighter, the promise of change real for the first time. The fallout is not just consequence, it's the beginning of accountability. The school auditorium fills again, this time with teachers, students, and parents gathered in rows, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The principal stands at the podium, a stack of new policy documents in hand, his face set with determination and humility. He clears his throat, the room falling silent as he begins. "Today, we take responsibility," he says, his voice clear and steady. "We acknowledge the harm caused by our failures to recognize and support every student's potential." He gestures to the new guidelines, pages crisp and unmarked. Effective immediately, we are instituting a full review of past complaints, mandatory training for all staff, and a commitment to celebrate diverse perspectives in every classroom. Teachers exchange glances, some relieved, others uneasy, but all aware that the days of looking the other way are over. A student in the front row raises a hand, asking if the changes will last. The principal meets her gaze, nodding. "We will be held accountable. This is not just a policy, it's a promise." The words settle over the crowd, a mix of hope and skepticism in the air. Mrs. Whitlock sits quietly at the edge, her expression unreadable, the consequences of her choices now public. Parents nod in approval, some wiping away tears, others clapping, softly. Zahara sits with Grace and Jamal, her heart pounding as she realizes the ripple her story has created. The principal's decree is more than an apology. It is a call to action, a turning point in the school's history. As the assembly ends, students and teachers linger, reading the new guidelines posted on the walls, their conversations filled with cautious optimism. The promise of change, once just words, now feels possible, rooted in the lessons of the past and the hope for a better future. Mrs. Whitlock walks the hallways one last time, her steps echoing against the lockers that once marked her territory. The morning sun filters through the windows, casting long shadows as she passes classrooms where students glance up, some with curiosity, others with quiet satisfaction. She clutches a box filled with personal items, a faded mug, a stack of lesson plans, a framed certificate now face down. Teachers stand in small groups by the doors, their conversations pausing as she passes. One offers a polite nod, another looks away, uncomfortable with the finality of her departure. A student she once dismissed meets her gaze, holding it for a moment before turning back to his friends. The air is thick with unspoken judgment, every step a reminder of choices made and opportunities lost. Mrs. Whitlock's shoulders sag under the weight of regret, her authority dissolved into a series of memories she can't rewrite. As she reaches the main entrance, the janitor holds the door open, his expression neutral but his eyes saying more than words ever could. She steps outside, the box heavy in her arms, the sounds of laughter and conversation fading behind her. The school, once her domain, now feels foreign, transformed by the truth she tried to bury. Mrs. Whitlock pauses on the sidewalk, glancing back at the building, her reflection in the glass doors fractured and unfamiliar. The world moves on inside, students and teachers adjusting to a new reality where her influence no longer lingers. She walks away, each footfall a quiet reckoning, knowing that her exit is more than the end of a career. It's the closing of a chapter defined by denial and the beginning of a future shaped by accountability. News of Zahara's victory and the school's reckoning spreads quickly, carried on social media, local news, and word of mouth. Families gather around kitchen tables, their conversation shifting from resignation to hope as they discuss what happened and what it means for their children. In the park, parents watch their kids play, exchanging stories of their own struggles, and quietly celebrating the change Zahara inspired. At the corner store, a cashier greets customers with a smile, her voice brighter. "Did you hear about Zahara? She did it." The pastor mentions her name in Sunday's sermon, urging the congregation to remember that one voice can spark a movement. Teachers in other schools bring up Zahara's story in staff meetings, questioning old habits and advocating for new standards. Students who once felt invisible now speak up in class, their confidence growing as their ideas are finally welcomed. The school board receives thank you notes and calls for further reform, the community's expectations forever raised. Zahara's family is stopped on the street by neighbors offering congratulations and gratitude, their pride swelling with every handshake and hug. Even those who doubted change was possible find themselves inspired, planting seeds of courage in their own lives. The story becomes a touchstone, a reminder that justice is not a single event, but a living, growing force. As the weeks pass, the memory of what happened doesn't fade. It becomes part of the community's fabric, woven into conversations, lessons, and dreams. The school's halls echo with new energy, the walls lined with student projects, as diverse as the voices that created them. Zahara's journey is no longer just her own. It belongs to everyone who chooses to believe that change, once sparked, can never truly be silenced. The classroom feels unusually quiet as Zahara takes her seat at the far end, her project resting neatly before her. Though surrounded by students, she senses a profound isolation, the weight of unseen eyes and unspoken judgments pressing down. The usual chatter dims, replaced by a heavy stillness that seems to stretch endlessly. Mrs. Whitlock stands at the front, arms crossed, her gaze deliberately avoiding Zahara, as if erasing her presence from the room. Judges move methodically from table to table, their expressions unreadable, their notes scribbled in silence. Zahara's classmates steal glances, some filled with curiosity, others with discomfort, and a few with quiet solidarity that never quite reaches her. The air is thick with tension, every breath measured, every movement deliberate. Zahara keeps her chin lifted, hands folded calmly in her lap, drawing strength from memories of the garage and the unwavering support of her family. A judge pauses before her project, eyes scanning the purifier, then Zahara's face, nodding slightly before moving on without a word. Mrs. Whitlock's jaw tightens, her posture stiffening as if willing Zahara to disappear. Suddenly, the door opens and Elena Torres enters, camera in hand, her presence shifting the room's energy. Whispers ripple through the rows of students, and the principal appears at the doorway, his expression grave. "The board will review all submissions," he announces, his voice carrying a weight that settles over the room like a heavy fog. Mrs. Whitlock's composure falters, her authority quietly slipping away. Zahara feels the isolation but also a growing strength, knowing her story is no longer invisible. As the judges finish their rounds, the classroom remains charged, every student aware that something has changed. Zahara sits a little taller, her resolve unbroken, as the quiet storm within these walls begins to swell. Zahara's invention hums quietly in the corner of a rural classroom, sunlight glinting off its clear water reservoir. Children gather around, their laughter ringing out as they fill their cups, tasting clean water for the first time. News clips flash across TV screens in homes and community centers, showing Zahara's purifier being installed in schools across the district. Reporters narrate stories of villages transformed, of absenteeism dropping as sickness from dirty water fades into memory. In Zahara's old school, the purifier's gentle sound replaces the hush of doubt that once filled the halls. Teachers, who once questioned her now, nod with approval as they watch students drink freely, their faces bright with pride and relief. In the Torres living room, Grace sips her tea, her gaze lingering on Marcus's photo above the mantel. She smiles softly, her heart full as she listens to the news anchor praise Zahara's work. In the background, Mrs. Whitlock's image flickers on a muted television, her former confidence replaced by a hollow stare, the world moving on without her. Parents send thank-you notes and school boards request more purifiers, eager to be part of the change. Zahara's name becomes synonymous with hope and possibility, her story shared in classrooms and assemblies as proof that one idea, nurtured with courage, can ripple outward and transform lives. The purifier's legacy is more than clean water. It's a new standard of fairness, a lesson in listening, and a conscience awakened in every educator who once looked the other way. As Zahara visits a school to check on an installation, a little girl tugs her sleeve and whispers, "Thank you for making us matter." Zahara kneels to meet her eyes, realizing that the true legacy of her work is the belief it plants in every child who drinks from her hands. The lab feels different now, sunlight streaming through windows that once seemed clouded by doubt. Zahara stands at the workbench, surrounded by students eager to learn, their projects bursting with color and creativity. A nervous boy hesitates, holding up a robot decorated with bold patterns and bright beads. "What if they say it's too different?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Zahara smiles, reaching for her father's old screwdriver, its handle worn smooth by years of persistence. She hands it to him, her tone steady and encouraging. "Then we rebuild it louder," she says, her words ringing with quiet conviction. The students around them nod, emboldened by her resolve. The garage's old shadows have faded, replaced by the lab's warm glow and the chatter of ideas shared freely. Zahara moves from table to table, offering advice, adjusting circuits, and celebrating every unique approach. Her guidance is gentle but firm, a blend of her father's wisdom and her grandmother's resilience. Teachers peek in, drawn by the energy, some offering hesitant praise, others simply watching with newfound respect. The students' confidence grows with each experiment, their fear of rejection melting away in the light of Zahara's support. The room hums with possibility, every surface covered in inventions that would have once been dismissed. As the day ends, Zahara lingers at the workbench, her hand resting on the screwdriver, a symbol of battles fought and won. She glances at the students packing up their projects, their laughter echoing in the hall, and feels the weight of her role as mentor. The lab is no longer a place of quiet exclusion, but a sanctuary for bold ideas and brave voices. Zahara's whisper, once drowned out by doubt, now shapes the future, one lesson at a time. Mrs. Whitlock sits alone in a dimly lit diner, the worn leather booth creaking beneath her weight. Her fingers trace the rim of a chipped coffee cup, the dark liquid inside cold and bitter, mirroring the chill settling in her chest. Outside, the world moves on, but inside this small space, time seems to slow. She scrolls through her phone, the screen glowing with Zahara's viral victory speech, the words and images a relentless reminder of her fading influence. Her eyes darted to the window as neighbors passed by, their gazes averted, conversations hushed. The silence outside is louder than any protest, a quiet condemnation that wraps around her like a shroud. Mrs. Whitlock's lips press into a thin line, the tight curl at the corner betraying a mix of regret and defiance. She takes a slow sip of coffee, the taste harsh and grounding. A waitress approaches, offering a tentative smile and a refill, but Mrs. Whitlock barely notices, lost in the weight of stolen glances and whispered judgments. The diner's jukebox hums softly in the background, a melancholy tune underscoring the isolation. Her phone buzzes again, a message from a former colleague, the words brief and distant. "It's not the same anymore." Mrs. Whitlock's gaze falls to the table, fingers tightening around the cup. The room feels smaller, the walls closing in as the consequences of her actions settle like dust. Outside, a child's laughter breaks through the quiet, a stark contrast to the heavy stillness inside. She exhales slowly, the fight draining from her as the booth feels smaller with every passing moment. The scene fades with the soft clink of the coffee cup set down, a symbol of a power quietly slipping away. Grace sits in her favorite armchair, the afternoon sun casting gentle patterns across the living room. A steaming mug of chamomile rests. In her hands, the fragrant warmth rising to meet her steady breath. On the mantel, Marcus's photograph smiles down, his eyes bright with pride, a silent witness to the battles and victories that shaped their family. In the background, Zahara's trophy gleams, catching the light with every shift in the room. The soft whir of Zahara's purifier blends with Grace's quiet hum, an old protest song that once echoed through marches and meetings, now a lullaby of perseverance. Grace sips her tea, her gaze lingering on the trophy, her heart swelling with memories of struggle and the promise of change. The house is peaceful, but every object holds a story. The worn edges of the photo frame, the faded protest button pinned to a cushion, the stack of letters from neighbors who watched Zahara's journey unfold. Grace's fingers trace the rim of her mug, her mind drifting to the women who came before her, whose resilience paved the way for this moment. She thinks of Zahara's courage, the way her granddaughter stood tall in the face of doubt, and feels the weight of generations resting gently on her shoulders. The purifier's hum is more than a sound. It is the anthem of their family's quiet resistance, a testament to the power of persistence and love. As Grace finishes her tea, she closes, her eyes letting the warmth settle deep within her, a reminder that true change is brewed slowly, steeped in patience and hope. The room is filled with the echoes of the past and the promise of tomorrow, resilience shining as brightly as the trophy on the shelf. New posters line the school's hallways, their bold letters declaring, "Celebrate diverse perspectives." The walls, once crowded with the same old faces and faded achievements, now display guidelines for fairness and inclusion, each word a promise that things will not return to how they were. Teachers gather in small groups, some reading the new policies with cautious optimism, others with folded arms and uneasy glances. A few nod in approval, their voices low as they discuss what real change might look like. In the main office, a janitor carefully pins Zahara's photo beside the new rules, stepping back to admire the girl who turned cracks in the system into doorways for others. Students pause to read the posters, their conversations shifting from gossip to possibility. "Did you see? They're actually listening now," one whispers, her friend nodding, hope flickering in her eyes. In the staff lounge, a heated debate simmers as teachers challenge old habits, some defending tradition, others pushing for progress. The principal walks the halls, stopping to answer questions, his tone firm but encouraging. "This is just the beginning," he says, meeting the gaze of a skeptical teacher. "We're accountable now." Zahara passes by, her presence met. With smiles and respectful nods, her story woven into the fabric of the school's new identity. The old sense of exclusion is replaced by a cautious optimism. Every bulletin board and classroom door, a canvas for new ideas. The janitor lingers a moment longer, his silent salute a tribute to the resilience that forced the school to change. As the bell rings and students flood the corridors, the policies remain, black and white on the wall, a daily reminder that justice is not just spoken but written, posted, and lived. Zahara sits by her bedroom window, a gentle afternoon breeze, fluttering the pages of her open journal. The room is quiet except for the distant sound of children laughing in the yard, their voices bright and unrestrained. She dips her pen in ink, the tip gliding across the paper as she writes her final entry. They said I didn't belong. Now, the future drinks from my hands. Each word is deliberate, a testament to the journey that brought her here, the struggles and triumphs etched into every line. The page is speckled with faint ink stains, reminders of late nights spent sketching, blueprints and rewriting dreams. Zahara pauses, her gaze drifting to the trophy on her shelf, then to the screwdriver resting beside it, a legacy of resilience, passed down and now carried forward. She thinks of the students she mentors, their projects bold and unapologetic, and the way the school has begun to shift, its walls echoing with new voices and ideas. The journal's spine creaks as she turns the page, the next sheet blank, waiting for stories yet to be lived. Outside, the wind carries laughter and hope, weaving through the open window and settling around her like a promise. Zahara closes. The journal, her hand resting on the cover, the weight of possibility pressing gently against her palm. She smiles, knowing her story is no longer just her own, but a spark for others to write their own futures. The pen rests on the desk, its work unfinished, ready for the next chapter. In the quiet, the world feels open and unwritten. Every heartbeat a reminder that change begins with a single voice daring to speak. A single droplet falls from Zahara's purifier into the surface of a quiet pond, sending circles outward, each ripple touching the next. Grace stands at the water's edge, her eyes shining with pride and emotion as she watches the waves expand. Tears slip silently down her cheeks, mingling with the pond as if adding her own legacy to the movement Zahara began. Across town, a teacher unpacks a box labeled New Curriculum. Her hands steady, her heart unexpectedly lighter. She pins a flyer about Zahara's invention to the classroom wall, her students gathering around, eager to learn how one idea can shift an entire community. In distant schools, children drink from clean water fountains, their laughter echoing in hallways where silence once reigned. Parents share Zahara's story at dinner tables, their words planting seeds of courage in young hearts. News anchors recount the journey, their voices carrying the message into homes that once felt powerless. The janitor, who once watched from the margins, now walks the halls with a quiet pride, nodding at every display of student work that would have once been overlooked. The circles grow wider, reaching places Zahara never imagined, her invention and her story woven into the fabric of new beginnings. The pond settles, but the ripples remain, a testament to the enduring power of action and truth. As dusk falls, Grace hums an old melody, her voice blending with the evening breeze. Somewhere, a child sketches a dream in a notebook, believing, for the first time, that her voice might matter. The ripple continues, unstoppable and quiet, proof that change, once set in motion, finds its way into every corner of the world.